Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 46 of 46 podcast. 2025 is off to the races. I hope you guys are having a fantastic year so far. It's white, it's wintry, and it's cold up here in the Adirondack Park, but that is to be expected this time of year. However, we're going to throw it back to the summertime this year because it's been a while since I've talked about the Northville-Placid Trail. And to this day, my series on the Northville-Placid Trail is my favorite series I've ever done on this podcast. And my adventure that year was pretty awesome on that trail. So I always love to chat about it. And today I have Juliana Chauncey. You may know her from the Backpacker Radio podcast. She was just on the Northville-Placid Trail this summer, and she's here on the 46 of 46 podcast today to go back through her adventure from Lake Placid to Northville. Juliana, welcome to the 46 of 46 podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So right off the bat, what was your initial response or your initial thought process before you started hiking the Northville-Placid Trail? What did you hear about it before you got on the trail? I just want to know first things first.
Sure. I heard it was more difficult than you would expect. My parents live in Northville. My mom's a superintendent of this Northville school district. So I've had a lot of external pressures to hike this trail because they obviously know that I hike a lot and all their friends know about the Northville-Placid Trail. So for them, it's like, man, we got to be able to say our daughter's done that one too. So the past couple of Christmases, I've been getting all the paraphernalia. I've got a mug, I've got a sweater, I've got all kinds of stuff. And all I don't have is actual time on the trail. So it was only a matter of time till it happened. And last winter around this time, it was June. It was June when we were back in Northville. I had bumped into two hikers that had just finished in the farm store, and they had also done the AT, and they compared it to if North Carolina and Tennessee had a baby with Vermont, was their description of the Northville-Placid Trail to someone who has done the AT, but not this one yet. And I think that was pretty accurate.
All right, cool. Good to know. The reason I ask is because the Northville-Placid Trail has developed kind of like an underwhelming reputation amongst the backpacking community. They're all like, yeah, you go in the woods and you're in the trees and a few days later you're done. Like that's the trail and especially here in the Adirondacks, like where we're used to going up and over mountains, it is somewhat underwhelming, but you kind of learn to appreciate the adventure for what it is. The lakes become like the cooler spots, the remoteness, all that. So I just wanted to kind of know what you thought before you went into it, but very good.
Well, I think also my family spends a lot of time. We've got a farmhouse that my grandma used to live at. We kind of describe it as it's in the woods. If you were to draw a triangle between Binghamton, Elmira, and Ithaca, it's right smack dab in the middle in the woods. And so growing up, when we would take vacations, we would go there for 2 weeks every summer. And for my parents, going outside and having fun was go into the woods. Go wherever you want, explore. Awesome. We don't care that you're young. We don't care that you're unsupervised. If you get lost, find a stream, follow it downhill, and you'll find a road. And then just tell someone, hey, I'm lost. So very unregulated exploration as a child. And I knew what forests looked like in New York. From that, I knew kind of to expect that sort of feeling. And for me, I was going in really looking for that nostalgia, that feeling of, man, this smells like home. This feels like home. I'm not looking for high peaks. I'm not looking for sweeping vistas. I'm just looking to enjoy the forest in fruity pebble season, which is when the trees are changing colors.
Yeah. And you got that. Very good. So first off, different times. What a time to be alive when your parents just send you in the woods and send you off on your way. Good times. So now give us a little bit more of a background on yourself. How'd you get into the outdoors? How did that eventually lead to what you're doing now? Give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, that mindset kind of played into all aspects of the outdoors growing up. I lived on a dead-end street. There was a stream that flowed through my neighbor's backyard. And I was the kid that was always covered in poison ivy. Like, you could not get me out of that stream. That was just what we did for fun. Because my parents, they put a blanket over the TV Sunday night through Thursday night.
Nice.
It was taped over, no TV, no nothing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I would tell them, oh, my friends are at summer camp. I want to go to summer camp. And my dad would open the back door. He'd say, there's summer camp. Go see what you can find. So it was very create your own adventure, find what you can to get enjoyment out of in what is around you. when I went to college, I started working at summer camps because I thought now I'll get my fix here. And I worked in a summer camp out by the Sierra Nevada in California. And that's right along the PCT. So I learned about the Pacific Crest Trail through that, and actually had dated a guy at the summer camp who was obsessed with the idea of doing it. And so we had lived together, and every night was like a new PCT documentary that we had to watch. And over time, I started thinking, okay, this could be cool. And the guy's philosophy, there's a reason he's not around anymore, but his philosophy was, I don't want to do it with you because you'll slow me down. Well, when I didn't go back to the summer camp, I had a summer free. And I thought, man, I don't know what I would do for this summer. And it's the first time in 8 years I haven't gone to a summer camp to work. But that PCT thing sure sounds fun. So I went and did that. And after that, that led me to backpacker radio. And then that led me to the Appalachian Trail. And it's just been a growing hobby ever since. I'm asthmatic. I don't do well at team sports. And I feel like you can't really mess up walking, because you can always just go slower or sit down and then get back up when you're ready to. There's no stopwatch on it. So I think it's a really great hobby for me.
Very good solo sport to partake in. Very good. So now starting with the PCT, then going to the AT, that's probably unconventional, I would have to imagine, in the backpacker world.
Yes. I had no interest in the Appalachian Trail, to be honest. I heard the Green Tunnel stuff. I thought I know what East Coast woods look like. I just did the PCT. After everything I saw, I don't want to do the AT. And all it took was a year and a half at a desk. And I thought, man, that AT is sounding really nice right about now. But I tried to temper my expectations with it in that I knew that it would be very hard to get lost. I knew that there were a lot of towns, so it wouldn't be a situation where I could run out of food and, be in a pickle that I couldn't fix. And so for me, I just wanted to be back on trail. I just wanted that feeling of hiking week after week after month, and having that be my day to day. And so I didn't do any research. I didn't know the day I got to McAfee Knob that I was getting to McAfee Knob. I didn't know when the white started. I didn't know any of that because I intentionally didn't want to see the photos so that when I found things that were really cool, it wouldn't be lackluster because I already had seen pictures. And I think that put a lot of awe back into the hike for me.
That's really like setting yourself up for the adventure of a lifetime by having very little understanding or expectations at that point of that. Very good. Now, talk to me about this. What were you doing? What was that desk job that had you say, it's time to go do something else?
Yeah,
Clearly, it didn't grab hold of you. It was like, I got to get out.
Classic first real job out of college because I had been, I spent my 20s road tripping, living out of a truck, working at summer camps, being that type of person. And so I was really excited to get this job. It was a graphic design job. I went to school for graphic design and broadcasting. And I was hired to be a Photoshopper to make mock-ups for digital directories. But the job ended up being 90% coding. And I was very good at that. I picked up on it quickly, but I wasn't being paid fairly for the work I was doing. And I knew that. And I gathered all the data. I went to them. I said, hey, over the course of a year and a half, I've put out 40% of our revenue on a team of 5, which means I'm doing 2 people's jobs, getting paid the least because I'm the newest. Here's what I think is fair. And I wasn't countered. I was just told no. And I said, okay, well, if I'm not going to be valued for what I'm doing here, I don't feel compelled to stay. And once I kind of decided that, I thought, man, it's January. What could I start in March, if not the AT? And so my mind kind of switched gears to, well, this is the perfect time to start planning that.
Awesome. Very good. You really stuck it to the man is what happened.
That's great. My last day was on a Friday and I started walking on a Sunday.
It's awesome. Well done. Very cool. So now you grew up in Western New York, correct?
Downstate, right near the Tappan Zee Bridge.
Down the Tappan Zee Bridge, because you're a Buffalo Bills fan. So I assumed you grew up in Western New York. Because
both my parents did.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. Probably I'd say probably 70% of my listeners are Western New York, Western New Yorkers. And I feel like I never go in the mountains here and don't see someone with a Bills hat on in the wintertime. So that's why. So we got a Bills fan here for all of you Western New Yorkers who are probably saying go Bills and jumping on a table and breaking it right now as you listen to this podcast. But very good. I have crossed the Tappan Zee Bridge about 1 billion times in my life. I always joke that my autobiography will be called Friday Nights on I-87, the James Appleton story. Just going back and forth to New York City, back and forth to the Adirondacks to New York City. Very good. Cool. So you basically said, it's time to go back to the trail. You went back to the trail. Now you have a successful podcast as well. Tell everyone about the podcast that you're the host of.
Yeah, everything I think that's come my way has been just being open to having things happen and saying yes to things, even if you're not really sure about it. Because when I started the PCT, I had learned about the trek doing my research for that trail. And I saw that they had bloggers that wrote on there. And I thought, wow, that'll be a cool way to show my parents that I'm still alive. And I had met Zach leading up to the hike because he was also hiking the PCT that year. And he needed help turning on his camera. So we were Facebook friends because I applied to be a blogger. And he had made a post, can someone show me how to use this camera? And I said, sure, I can show you. We met up for that. And then we high-fived and we passed each other on the trail. I was not a very good blogger. I quickly realized I like taking videos better because I don't get my thumb sore every night trying to hammer at a phone. And I liked editing videos. And when I got back from the trail, the trek was doing all these meetups where every month they would have people meet up that were hikers. And I would go to those. And I didn't realize that I was quietly being interviewed for potentially being this co-host for a podcast that didn't exist yet until one of the nights I left the meetup and I had gotten my car. And I remember where I was sitting in the car facing the brewery. And I get a call from Zach right after I left. And I thought I must have forgotten something there. And he said, hey, I've been thinking about starting this podcast. And I was looking for a co-host. I want it to be a female because I don't want it to be so male driven. I want that perspective on it too. What do you think about starting it? And in my mind, it was 8 years ago. I thought podcasts are kind of lame, right? Like it was in that phase where like nerds listen to podcasts. Yeah. I was like, do I want to be that person? And you think about it for a minute and it's like, I'm not cool normally. Like, what do I have to lose? Sure. Why not? And so we started it. And I mean, it was real not put together in the beginning. We recorded the first episode out of my basement. We were doing it on 3 separate computers with 3 separate mics plugged in. You would sync up the audio in the beginning and everything would be perfect. And 20 minutes in, all 3 talk tracks are at different spots. So you'd have to go and cut them and realign them. And we were doing all of it. And it took about 6 months before we were like, we need to hire an editor. And, then the team slowly grew from there. And now it's a well-oiled machine. But yeah, it's fun to see what 8 years can do from something that you're just trying out for the first time to where it's kind of grown to now.
Great. Fantastic. You guys do great work. When I was on your show, I probably got like 5 or 6 text messages from people that said, you didn't tell me you were on this podcast. I said, cool. So a lot of my listeners listened to it too. They were pretty stoked that they were merging the Adirondacks with your podcast because people up here, as you could imagine, are just obsessed with this park. Completely obsessed. So when you were growing up, did you guys come up here? Your parents live in Northville now. So did they find the ADK later? Did you grow up coming here? Give us a little background on that.
Yeah, I never really came up there, honestly. They're homebodies. They're very much the vacations were the farmhouse and not vacations were home. And that's it. So that was kind of my New York experience was just back and forth to the farmhouse. My nonna lived in Syracuse. So it was really the Finger Lakes region that I got to see most of. But I went to school in Oswego. I had friends in Potsdam, so I made a drive pretty frequently from Oswego to Potsdam and back. But even that's not in the Adirondacks. So I think the closest taste I got to them wasn't until doing the Vermont section of the Appalachian Trail, where you get that kind of rugged terrain with the roots and with the mud and all that. But I knew they were there and I knew about them. And it wasn't until my dad retired that my mom decided to switch jobs to work upstate. Because once he retired, I mean, he just wanted to go back north. He's not, neither of them are city people. So they mentioned at Christmas this time that, they've lived there for 2-3 years. It feels like they've been there for 30 because of how the community up there is. And great. That's totally true.
I love it. Very good. So you were clearly the driving force behind you and Zach coming to do the Northville-Placid Trail, I have to assume.
Some requests several times throughout the years. I was just chipping away at it, because got to get this thing done. So I stopped getting these gifts at Christmas that I can't explain wearing. And we take these trips where it's the perfect length. Everyone lives in New York City. So it just made sense for us to do a road trip around. And we weren't sure entirely how much we would be able to do on the trip itself, but it just so happened to work out that with the time I got off from work, I could wrap up what we didn't finish afterwards, which was really what I wanted to get done.
All right. Very cool. All right. Well, let's dive in. Let's hear about your experience on the Northville-Placid Trail. So we recorded a podcast and an hour later, you guys set sail on Averyville Road in Lake Placid, walking south to Northville, back to mom and dad's house. So take us through. How did it start? What was your prep? How were the bugs? I know we talked a little bit about that, but give us kind of your mentality, your mindset as you got dropped off at the trailhead. What were you expecting?
Honestly, not too many expectations. That was the thing, is because of hearing that it underwhelmed so many people, I didn't want to go in with expectations. I knew that would set me up for not a great time. So I tried to go in with none. I tried to go in just expecting that it would be a little rugged, that I wouldn't get views, and that I was really out there to enjoy a break from work and not so much to see the coolest view out there. But starting the trail, I'd say I was anxious, mainly because we had just done your interview and we got to the trailhead at about noon, and it's September. The days aren't long and we had miles to make, and it took us a while to get out there because of the interview. But gosh, we couldn't find somewhere in town in Lake Placid that had fuel canisters. The outfitter didn't. And we're like, isn't that what an outfitter does? Like, what do you mean you don't have fuel canisters? But the bike shop ended up having what we needed. And so by the time we got on trail, I think I felt behind already. Like when you start a day late and you feel like you don't have the mileage you need, that was me. And that northern stretch, I think, is the most rugged of all of it. And so that first day, I compared it to us going through a car wash where they just have those things hitting you on both sides as the car's going through. That was us. And the elevation was not massive. There's barely any elevation gain. So you'd think you'd be moving at a pretty good pace. And then whenever we'd check where we were not where we thought we'd be because we were just moving slow. And so that first day was probably not the most fun because we felt rushed through it and we didn't really feel like we got to enjoy too much of it with the pace that we were trying to keep. But I think that was a nice wake-up call for what needed to happen. We sat down, we had a talk. Okay, we need to wake up earlier tomorrow. We need to get on the trail earlier tomorrow. We remember the sun sets at 5 now, whatever it was. So we need to kind of be conscious about that as we go. But that being said,
starting in Northville too, you are getting a lot of you're going from Northville to starting basically like that first 10 miles of that trip is like, I feel like it's probably 80% of the elevation for the whole trip is in that first day as well, in terms of elevation for that, because you're going uphill from the park in Northville to the trailhead, and then you start going up. But then once you're up there, that's like the majority of the elevation on the whole 138 miles at that point. So that's
we didn't start in Northville. We started in Lake Placid.
Duh, my God. In my mind, I'm thinking
so that's
Northville.
the kicker.
That's right. You're so right. You're so right. Well, I don't know why I was thinking that. In my mind, I was picturing you as like, that's most of the elevation. But yeah, that's right.
It should have been flat. The map says flat. I mean, it doesn't spell it out, but it pretty much does. And leaving Lake Placid, we started at the trailhead on Averyville Road. I know the trail technically starts at the train station, but for us, gosh, it's noon by now. Like, we got to start where, we can. And that was the parking lot.
And to a lean-to on the first night?
The first night, it looks like we ended up having lunch by a stream just before the Moose Pond tent sites. And then on night one, we had a tent site at the Oluska Pass Brook lean-to.
Okay.
I don't know how to, is that how you say it? Oluska?
Yeah, the Oluska lean-to. So, I mean, you guys booked it. Like, you went pretty far that first day then, if you went all the way to Oluska. So that means you went past Duck Hole. What was that mileage for the first day? Do you have that written down?
I can try to figure it out. The hard thing, And this was something that was interesting to realize as well. I think when you come from a trail like the PCT or the AT, you're very used to using far out for your maps. And that was a big thing for this, is that the Northville-Placid Trail isn't on far out. So it's a blessing and a curse, that app, because everything is so easy to use. Like the interface on it is so user friendly. It's so easy to see the mileage from point A to point B. And because this wasn't on there, we had to use different maps. So I ended up using Onyx. I tried Gaia. I tried it on the Teton Crest Trail and it just wasn't for me. I didn't like the way it worked, but I really enjoyed Onyx. But it doesn't just show you the mileage real easily like a far out trail would. Mm-hmm. So parts of that were tough to figure out. But if I'm looking at Averyville Road, that would have been 12.2 from Duck Hole, and then 2 Duck Hole from Aluska would have been
because the Aluska
another 5.
I mean, you also pass the what I'm trying to think in my mind now. So I told Juliana before we started doing this episode that I loaned my Northville-Placid Trail map to a friend. And as these things go, that map is now gone forever.
Right.
Will be very surprised if I get the map back. Oh, you went past the Cold River lean-tos. That's what I was thinking in my mind. So, Cold River lean-to.
According to the calculator app, it was 17.5 miles.
Yeah. It's a big day one for sure. Very cool.
Yeah.
The Aluska lean-to also. So like when I did this trail, I, in my mind made mental notes of lean-tos I would have loved to have stayed at, but the way that I, broke the trail up, obviously is you're kind of going for mileage, and certain miles make sense and then certain lean-tos don't make sense. But one of the lean-tos that was on my radar for going again was the Aluska lean-to. I felt like that area was just really pleasant, very just pleasing.
Yeah. We had a nice time, and I'm going through my photos as well while I'm looking at it. And one thing blends into the other. The thing that I haven't done yet for this trail, which is next on my to-do list when I get home, is editing videos. Mm-hmm. Because once I have those edited, and that's why I prefer taking videos to writing blogs, is I can watch it and the memories come back. Versus just looking at photos, it's like, ooh, what was that? So I'm looking forward to editing those. But yeah, it was nice to get to a lean-to and have just one there again, because I haven't seen them or been in them since the AT, and there's something really homey about being a lean-to, which is nice.
The best. Absolutely the best. I'd like to have one on my property. I will eventually. Eventually I'll build one. I've already cleared out the area I want to put a lean-to, which was like 2 summers ago. So eventually it will become time to build the lean-to for the area that I cleared out on my property. But yeah, lean-tos, there's just something so magical and just perfect about them. They simplify life very much.
We'll have to get you to the farmhouse, because my uncle built a lean-to right next to the pond we have there. So
I love it.
Yeah, we've got a personal Chauncey lean-to thanks to him.
Very good. So how did Zach like day one? How did he fare out there?
I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if you've listened to the episode recap we did, I think it's common knowledge that he wasn't maybe loving it very much. It was very humid. I know 17.5 is a great amount of miles, but it wasn't the amount of miles that we were hoping to get done. We were hoping to hit 20 that day. Yeah. And we didn't really get time to stop and take breaks because we started at noon. So it really was just a march. It was a march that we didn't stop until we got there. And if you're out there for fun and this is your vacation or your break or whatever we want to consider it, like that's not maybe most people's definitions of fun.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the nostalgia to tie you to an area the way that I did, I can see being like, why am I doing this?
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's just work at that point. You're just out here working on your trip. That granted, it's better than sitting at a desk. We all know, but the backcountry, I'll tell you, we've all been at times out there where we're like, I would be fine sitting at a desk in this moment. I've had enough for today. But yeah, totally get that.
Well, that's kind of what I love about going on these hikes. And I've done this when I've been between jobs, or even when I pull my PTO and I take like a week or two. I'll do really, really big miles, and I will not get a lot of breaks on the hikes that I do. And the nice thing about it is by the end of the 2 weeks, there's nowhere else you'd rather be than a desk. So I think it's a great way when you start to kind of get worn down with work to reset yourself and say, man, what I cannot wait to do is take off my shoes, sit down, and just be at a computer from 9 to 5. So I think it's helpful too if you're getting that burnout from work, is just put yourself out there and make yourself march, and you'll be happy to go back to work.
Yeah, great perspective. Great perspective. So how did night 1 go at the Aluska Lean-To?
Great, no complaints. After that, we had started to get to see some of the suspension bridges, which was really cool too. So I feel like day 2 started off nice because we had the mindset of wake up earlier. We had the morning to get miles done with. We were having fun on the suspension bridges. I feel like for me, day 2 was a really great way to just start to ease into the trail. Which might not have also been shared with everyone, because the funny thing about lunch on day 2, we had reached Long Lake. And we had kind of a tete about, is this what we want to do? Is this how we want to spend the time up here? Or should we be trying to bag a 46er or trying to do something where we can go at a slower pace and take it all in? And, talking about coming into a trail with expectations, I had come into this with the expectations of I am doing this trail. And so when the idea was pitched for maybe let's go hike Mount Marcy, maybe let's go do something different, I had what I like to call a midday meltdown, which is, I'm a big crier and I'm very emotional. I'm a Pisces. I didn't like that idea. So I had to kind of sat on the shore of Long Lake and just was not happy. I was kind of going through my mind of all the things that I thought I'd be doing on this trip and how that would change. And when will I make this trail then? And all this stuff. And I think from the other perspective, it was, oh man, I didn't realize you wanted to do it that badly. I just had no idea that this was going to lead to that, by suggesting something like this. And we all kind of sat on the shore. It was me, Zach, and Elise. The 3 of us were on it. We all kind of sat there and thought, well, this is really nice though. Like Long Lake is gorgeous. The weather is nice. The water's nice. Like we're having a really nice lunch break here. I think we would all be having a lot more fun if we felt like we had the time to afford to slow down and enjoy this. And that was kind of the common ground, was we just don't want to feel rushed. We don't want to feel like we're marching. We want to be able to say, hey, this is a really cool lake. Let's stop and camp here. And so that's what we did. We stopped. We continued to hike down Long Lake to the south shore of it. And then we camped, maybe not quite at the south shore, but there was a cool campsite and shelter lean-to towards the bottom of Long Lake. And I don't have the
cove. Is that the cove something, or is it? There's Kelly Point, which is where I stayed. Kelly Point number 2, I believe I stayed, which is kind of middle of the lake. But then there's the Hidden Cove, Catlin Bay lean-to.
Catlin Bay, that's it. There's the Catlin Bay, and the cool thing when we were looking at it on the map was that it almost looked as if this lean-to was out on an island, which was really neat. So we saw that and we thought, man, we don't want to hike past this. And the mileage that we had originally set for ourselves to get to where we would have to go tonight, we wouldn't even be able to sit here and enjoy this. And we don't want to do that. This is awesome. Like Catlin Bay lean-to, if I show you it on a map, it is literally like out on this island. That X is where we camp.
Yep.
That's awesome. So we said, let's go there. There were people at the actual lean-to itself. They had boated in, which was also really cool to see. So we found a good campsite. We got an amazing sunset. We all kind of just had the time to finally start having fun again. And we woke up the next morning to just how that mist goes over the water and the nice brisk fall wake up, and thought, we're all in such a better mood. I think it really was that first day of having to move double time and going into the second morning with the panic of we can't fall behind again, and needing that reset of we're out here to enjoy this. And if we're not enjoying it, what are we doing? And I think after that night at Catlin Bay, all of us were in such a better mood.
Great. Very good. Probably had some nice loons on the lake, I imagine, as well, first in the morning, which, I'll tell you, nothing really beats waking up at a lean-to to hearing the loons basically all night, more or less. But yeah, great way to wake up in the morning.
Yeah. Well, it was funny too, because so you can see Catlin Bay Lean-To 1 is over here. And then you kind of take your own trail to get out to Lean-To number 2. And then we went up there to where we camped. And so in my mind, I was like, I wake up in the morning and I try to be the first one out of camp because I don't move quickly. And I know that Zach and Elise are both faster hikers than me. So for me, I like to leave first so that I feel like I can move at my pace for the warm up. And I'm not feeling like I have to catch up the whole day. And that's, I think, a mental block on my thing more than anyone else making me feel that way. But it lets me start my day nice. So the next morning I started my day and we're at this X. And I'm thinking, I don't want to hike down to there and then back to the trail and then back down when we're going that way anyway. Mm-hmm. So I just want to get from there to there. I'm just going to bushwhack it. So I just looked at the map and I said, okay, I'm going that way and that way hits trail at some point. And that's kind of my method whenever I get off trail on other hikes is I look, where am I trying to go and where's my little location marker? And if I walk that way far enough, I should start to see something that looks like a trail. Mm-hmm. If you go off trail on this one, there's nothing smooth about it. So I was walking over what felt like down trees and all kinds of bushes and spider webs in the face. And it was funny. It was nice that I wasn't feeling rushed when I was doing it, but I was like, okay, maybe we're going to stay on trail from this point forward.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, did you guys have a full itinerary in terms of like which lean-tos you were planning to stay at each night, then called an audible, or did you really just kind of play it by ear each day?
No. So our stipulations were that we were going to the Bills game on Monday, go Bills, and that my dad was going to meet us at Lake Durand.
Yep.
And
Lake
take
Durand.
us to lunch and resupply us halfway through and then pick us up in Prosecco to go to the Bills game. So when we decided to slow down, the new question became, are we still going to hike to Prosecco or are we just going to hike to Lake Durand? And if we just hike to Lake Durand, then where are we going to get the food from him? And we know there's those 2 New York 8 highways. Mm-hmm. So kind of just planning around when he was going to drop off our resupply, how much food we had left, and what road we wanted him to do that at.
Sure. Very good.
Yeah.
So enough of an itinerary to keep you having to move, but not too stringent on calling an audible while you're out there.
Exactly.
Very good. All right. So this would have been day 3 now as you wake up at Catlin Bay and continue better spirits. Everyone's having a good time now. You're bushwhacking covered in spider webs. Take us through day 3.
Yeah, I think the spider webs is something that until I just said it, you forget about it. You like to forget. But that was worse than any of the bugs. I know you'd mentioned bugs. I had no issues with the bugs. Like they were not there. They were on vacation that week. They must have been. But the spiders, man, they were out. And me leaving camp first in the morning, I'm the one clearing the way. And these are like the thinnest little tinsel spider webs, teeniest little guys. And you're humid and sticky and sweaty and everything is sticking to you. And you're just like this whole time. And you'd see on the brim of your cap, just like a little one dangling. And oh my goodness, that was the one thing where I was like, I turned to Elise at one point and I was like, can you walk in front for a bit? Just because I cannot do this. Like I need a break from these guys. They are driving me nuts.
Yeah. It's the real deal. The struggle is real. You start early in the morning here, man. I'll tell you the amount of times I've like had done one of those like immediate stops because like at night you're walking and then the headlamp just catches like the glare of the spider web, but then you see the spider on all happens like that. And you quickly stop from like face into the spider web and into the actual spider on the web. Always makes me jump. I don't like spiders myself. They don't make me like upset, but who likes spiders? Who likes them?
Yeah. And the benefit about going southbound was we would see, not frequently, but we would see other hikers and most of the time they would be coming north. And so when they're coming north and they pass you, you're just sitting there like, yes, I've got like a mile where they've done the work before those little guys rebuild because they're fast too.
They are.
After a mile, they've already rebuilt.
Absolutely. They're here to take over. We are just in their way of their quest for domination.
Exactly. Yeah. So morning 3, we started having more fun. So this is the day that I believe my dad is picking it. Yeah, Friday meetup. So this is the day that we're going to get to Lake Durant. My dad's going to pick us up. We're going to go to lunch and we're going to get our resupply. And then we're going to do a little bit of a night hike. And so we passed the high point. That was a nice part of our morning, was passing the high point. And then when we got to the Salmon River tent sites, which is like right near Salmon Pond, there's this confusing intersection where you cross this dirt road and it looks like the sign for the trail is pointing one way, but then it looks like it goes the other way. And all that to say, we went down the road for about a mile, 2 miles round trip. Round trip because it was not the right way.
Yeah, yeah.
And we were finally we were having a good time. We were playing odds, which is a great game to play, where you basically say to someone, hey, what are the odds you'll do this? And let's say you say 5. We both say a number between 1 and 5. Your odds are 1 in 5 that we guess the same number. And if that happens, you have to do that thing. So that's a really fun way to pass time on trail. And you make it harder by saying if you're one number off, the person who odds you then has to do it themselves, which makes you less bold with what you propose. So we were playing this game. We were doing, we were trying to name every John Travolta movie we could think of. You're in that weird phase where time has passed and you're just trying to find ways to entertain yourself. And
sure,
we were doing that and having a great time. And then finally, when it slowed down, we were like, wait, where are we?
Mm-hmm. Got it.
And we checked the map and it was like, oh, we're nowhere close. And I was like, it's fine if we go, same mindset. I was like, if we just look at where the trail is and we just go in the woods there and we walk that way, we'll get back to the trail. And Zach was like, you can't fit between 2 of those trees. They are so densely packed. We're not doing, that is a dumb idea, which it absolutely was. So I oddsed him, what are the odds that you will take the bushwhack?
Okay.
He did not lose. Good for him on that. So we walked back the whole road to that same spot that we had stopped at, and then finally got back on trail. So that did kill some time. But it was a fun road walk. We had a really good time on it. And we got to Lake Durant. And just before it, Zach had rolled his ankle, not once, but twice. So we get to the road and he's limping a little bit because of his ankle, and we go to get lunch. We have a couple beers. There was a diner near Blue Mountain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't remember the name of it. Do you know the name of it?
I don't know. Everything's when I did this trail, it was March, April, somewhat May. So it's all everything's closed by that.
Yeah. Well, you don't have many options. So if you're hitchhiking down that road towards the mountain, that's going to be the diner. There's one. So we went there, we had lunch, and then we went to the gas station to fix up our resupply and lay everything out and figure out what we still needed. And Zach had looked down and his foot was just the size of a balloon. Ooh. So we thought, is it worth you coming with us on this next stretch and maybe having to turn back and then no one's here, or, something happens and you're in the middle of the woods? Or is it best where my dad is literally right here with a car? We just sent you home with him. So Zach got off trail that night and he went back with my dad to Northville. So he got the extra long tour of Northville for my parents for the days he was there. And me and Elise packed out, we were going to pack out some beers, but we ended up drinking them all in the car. So we were a little buzzed when we left Lake Durant, and we were all excited. Girls' night, making it fun. Hiked a couple miles, and then we ended up sleeping at the lean-to on Stevens Pond. Yeah, it was unoccupied. So that was exciting. We made a fire because we were really trying to just keep the spirits up. And yeah, slept great. But we didn't really see the pond because obviously it was dark by the time we got there. We night hiked pretty much.
Did Zach roll his ankle just step on a rock, step on a root, or was there a more traumatic event that occurred?
No, I think we were just trying to get to the road. I think we were excited about going to the diner and getting a hot meal. And so we were moving quicker. We were almost there. And so when you're almost there, you're not really being as cautious.
Yeah.
And then I think you don't think you're going to roll your ankle immediately after rolling your ankle. So once you do it, you're like, okay, I got that done. And then you do it again and you're like, oh,
For sure. All right. Understood. Yeah. All right. So you got your hot meal. Now you're at Stevens Pond.
Yes.
This would be night 4, I believe.
This is night 3.
Night 3, yes. Because you went
we're on
Catlin Bay all the way to Stevens Pond.
Yes. So Catlin Bay on Long Lake to Stevens Pond here. Quick lunch hiatus at Lake Durant. And then from there, now we're waking up at Saturday morning, and we had a nice break at Wakely Pond. That's right where it starts to go onto road, and there's a bunch of cars passing us by. So we were seeing a lot of cars with the boats that they were taking to wherever the boat launch was. I had a sandwich that I had gotten at, I think it was a Stewart's that we had stopped at when we were in Lake Durant. So I had packed out a sandwich that I was stoked about. And it ended up, usually the sandwiches will stay good for a couple of days. Like usually I'm not one to get sick off of some old cheese or some warm meat. Wasn't the case this time. I was having terrible stomach issues. I was eating Tums like crazy. And I was just looking at the sandwich, like the last thing I want to eat right now is you. Like I want nothing to do with you. And that sucks because in my hiking rationing brain, you're 2 meals and I don't want you anymore.
Sure.
So Elise started making fun of me because she started saying I was eating like a baby bird because I was just like picking at little Teddy Grahams and doing all kinds of stuff instead of actually eating my food.
Sure.
So at Wakely Pond, I found a frog that was in the water and I was, looking at him, having a nice break, just getting off my feet instead of necessarily carving up.
So you went with the protein of the frog legs is what you ate that day, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
You cooked the frog up. Got it. Okay.
Picking them up out of the pond, putting them down.
Hey, desperate times call for desperate measures when you're out in the backcountry. You got to do what you got to do, especially on the Northville-Placid Trail where you're nowhere near a hot meal. Sometimes frogs are what's for lunch. That's what we have. Understood.
I do wonder how many days it would take for me to get that desperate, because there have been times I've run out of food and I'm just like, it's fine. I'll get to town or I'll see what I have left and I'll just start nitpicking at it. But I do wonder how long it would take before I would actually consider something like that.
The frog test. It's a very good way to tell just how hungry you really are.
Right.
The official frog test, frogtest.com, coming soon.
So I was excited. This doesn't usually happen, but I was excited to see a road walk. So I was like, man, this is awesome. We are moving slow on flat ground that should be moving fast. And now we're on a road and I know the mileage I make on roads. So this is predictable and great.
Yeah.
So I really loved the road walks. And I feel like we had gone past a pretty popular camping area shortly after that.
On the road, at Wakely Dam, so you pass the campsite and then you hit the road. Yeah, there's another tent site, as I recall, somewhere along that road. But you're at an actual campground.
I think it was there's Lake Durant, there's that one. There's a morning water spot, Wakely Pond. Okay, so from there I think it was Cedar River. Cedar River Flow.
Cedar River Flow, yep. Sure.
Yeah. It felt like there were a lot of weekend backpackers there. Compared to, it was Friday, Saturday morning, but it seemed more accessible than we had originally expected. So that was cool to walk past. And then from there, we had lunch a little bit after we passed those camp spots. Near Carrie Lean-To. That was where we had lunch.
Yep, sure.
We got to Carrie Lean-To for lunch. We didn't actually go to the Lean-To. It's a little bit off trail, and bonus miles just aren't really for me. So we sat at the junction.
At this, bonus miles also aren't for me either, especially on a long trip. We got plenty of stuff to do. Let's just keep going. But at this point, you're basically halfway through the trail once you get to that Wakely Dam portion. So how are you feeling mentally at this point? Because that is pretty much the halfway point.
It's really good. I'm just happy to be there. It's quiet. It's nice. I had an audiobook I was listening to. If any of your readers listen to Romantasy, I used to not. And then I picked up Court of Thrones and Roses, which is a Sarah J. Maas series. It's kind of like garbage. to read, honestly, but it's catchy. And she had another book set called Throne of Glass, and it's an 8-book set, which is a lot of books. And I have a couple of other friends that are hikers that were all considering reading it too. So we had a group chat of about 5 of us that were like, let's just get this thing done together and we can commiserate in it. And so when I was doing this trail, I was on book 6 and 7, which this is like a total nerd rabbit hole, but book 6 and 7, for some reason, she writes them separately, but they're the same timeline. Just different locations. So people will do what's called a tandem read, where there's a chart you follow, and it's like chapter 1 through 6 of this book, and chapter 1 through 4 of this book, and chapter 7 through 9 of the,
Okay.
And so I had been listening to those. And so that was it for me. It was great because it's just, I get to listen to this all day. I'm getting so far in these books. I'm not really thinking about the mileage, because instead of thinking, okay, 2 more miles to the next break spot, I'm thinking 2 more chapters till I switch to the other book. 1 more chapter till I switch back to this book. And I'm kind of tracking things based on that instead of actually paying attention to how far I'm going. So I think having the audiobooks to listen to really made it very enjoyable for me, because you just said I was halfway. I didn't know that. I actually had no idea where the halfway point was. I was just enjoying sitting down when I got to sit down, taking out the headphones, hanging out with Elise. And then when we were walking, putting them back in and just diving back into book world.
Sure. I get it. I listen to podcasts. If I'm hiking solo, I have a 1 ear in listening to a podcast often when I'm out there, because, sometimes it's just something to help pass the time. I'm still enjoying the scenery around me. It just helps me to not be just me and my brain for, all day. So I'm right there with you personally. I mean, granted, I'm not as into the, what was the word, romantasy novels that you said.
This is new for me.
Okay.
I'm usually a strictly nonfiction girl. So this is new. But it's nice. You can encourage yourself when you're hiking with it too. I like to use it as, kind of candy for myself, where I say, if I'm sitting, I have to press pause. And so if I want to keep listening, I have to be standing and moving. And so there would be times I'd get to breaks and I'd be sitting there and I'd think, I want to hear what happens next. So then I'd get up from the break and I'd keep hiking, because if I wasn't hiking, I can't press play.
There you go.
So it really does help, just playing those mental games with yourself, to not feel like the days are dragging on. And that's kind of where I was at this point, was just, I want to know what happens. I'm at like the meat of this book.
Sure. I get it.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening next. And, you're out there in the woods, you're in the Northville-Placid Trail. But again, people knock it all the time, and I can't blame them. It is basically the same scenery for 138 miles. So it does get a little bit monotonous at times. So I can relate strongly to that. So you're continuing on the day. So this is day 4 now that we're on.
We're on Saturday. It's day 4.
And you're heading, I guess, technically like towards Terrell Pond at this point, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes. So where we are now, if I go back to my we had lunch at Caroline too. Saturday, we had camped at Cedar Lakes, on the south end of Cedar Lakes. So where is that? We passed, where am I? Trying to figure out where I am. Cedar Lake. Here we go. So there was Cedar Lake number 3 lean-to, which we didn't initially plan to stop at. We planned on stopping at Cedar Lake lean-to number 2, I think, which was right near trail. But when we passed that, there was like a big group there camping. Didn't really look like there's much space. So we said, okay, we'll keep going. We'll go to the next lean-to. And we get down, kind of show you. So that's the off trail to the lean-to over here.
Sure.
And we were coming down, so we got to about here on the lake. And there was a nice camp spot with a nice view. And we thought, do we want to add the bonus miles of going out to that lean-to to find out that it might be taken? And do we want to wake up tomorrow morning and have to walk the bonus miles back? We're at a nice spot right now. Let's just stop here. And so we stopped right on the shore, just shortly before the turnoff to that lean-to, and we camped on the shore there. And that was a really nice tent spot.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right,
The other thing that, actually, this just reminded me that I hadn't prepared for was my trekking pole broke. It's one of those where you tighten it like that, you twist to tighten, and then it locks. And that part had not worked. And I forgot that happened before I started the trail. And I had collapsed them to fly with them to check them in my luggage. And on this trail, the other one ended up going too. And so I had taken my Leuco tape, which I use for blisters, and I just taped them where it was supposed to be for my hiking height. Unfortunately, I'm 5'1", so my hiking height and the right height for pitching a tent that uses trekking poles are different. And so usually I extend them at night, and I couldn't because I basically locked them in place with the tape that I used, and I didn't have enough to redo it. So my tent was not pitched well any of these nights. There was a lot of extra room that should have been utilized by a higher trekking pole that wasn't. So we were really having a laugh every time we weren't in the lean-to.
Sure.
Because, man, I looked pathetic. I mean, you'd look at my tent and it was like it's something you'd see in a news article where it's like someone left this tent here 3 weeks ago. Someone just stumbled upon it and found it. It looks like it's been abandoned. That was what it looked like when I was camping.
But it worked though. Yes, it worked. It kept
the bugs out.
Yeah, it kept the bugs out. It
gave me the impression of safety. That's all you need.
That's it. That's really what it is. People always ask me, like, do you prefer tents? Do you prefer lean-tos? I personally opt for a lean-to anytime that's available because the tent makes me I feel more trapped in a tent than I feel in a lean-to, even though you're out in the open. Different kind of perspectives on it, but the tent makes me feel like I'm going to be trapped. I'm trapped and I am vulnerable, but I can understand someone saying, but if you're out in the open, you're vulnerable. Yes, you are too then. But my brain kind of like goes to this side of the spectrum, whereas a tent feels like a prison to me. So that's my perspective. Yeah, most people are. I think.
Well, for me, a lean-to, I would think people know where those are. They're written on a map. So if someone wants to find where someone's sleeping, here it is. It's right here. And the whole front door is open. So like they know where to come into, and then they're at the front in the opening and you're stuck in there with 3 walls. Versus a tent, you got to really be looking for one to find it, especially if it's pitched as poorly as mine and the woods are that thick. And I'm closed in all around. So I feel like I feel protected.
And I get it. That's what a rational, normal person would say.
Yeah.
To a tent. I feel like I'm bizarre in this feeling safer in the lean-to world. I'm strange like that, I suppose.
Well, I like to camp with other people. I think that's my paranoia is when I camp by myself, if something happens, I have to handle it. And I get away with this more than I should, but because I'm 5'1", because I'm a girl, whatever it might be, if I'm camping, like on the AT, I hiked with like 6 or 7 guys. If I'm in a shelter with them and something happens, I feel like in my mind, I'm pretty low on the list of who has to deal with it first. If a bear comes into camp, like, are we sending me out there? Probably not. I mean, sure, we could, but I can rationalize to myself, like, maybe I won't be the one that has to deal with this. And I sleep so soundly. But when it's just me, I'm like, oh man, like when I was on the Colorado Trail, I think it was a bear that was coming back, and it bluff charged my tent, and I had my dog with me, which was great. But it was just me, and I was like, oh, I'm not equipped to deal with this. I don't know what to do. I'm freaking out. So I really do try to find campsites where if I am hiking alone, someone else is there, because I give myself the illusion of safety of if someone else is there and something happens, like they can help figure out a solution.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Very good.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to any Thrice listeners who just heard her say The Illusion of Safety and thought about the best album by my favorite band of all time, Thrice, The Illusion of Safety. Sidebar. Anyway, sorry, continue. As soon as you said that.
No, I'm a huge Thrice fan. That's why I said it.
It's amazing. We should talk.
I'm kidding. Never heard of them.
Of course, most people haven't, but it's my favorite band of all time and my favorite album by them. So, of course, my ears perked up when you said that sentence. But all right, anyways, enough about that. The greatest rock and roll band of all time. Continue about your Northville-Placid Trail journey.
Yes. So day 5 ends up getting split because day 5, we hike until about 4 p.m. on Sunday, and then we get picked up. And I don't get back on trail until about 4 p.m. on Tuesday. So there's a day off in between because of the Bills game. So this is a day that we wake up Sunday and we know we are getting to Prosecco today because that's where we're getting picked up. So we had lunch at Spruce Lake, and from there we went to Prosecco, and it was kind of one of those days where you're at the bottom of your food bag. You know that you have a hot meal coming to you that night. You know you have a shower coming, and you're just trying to get the miles done, get your work done so you can go play.
Sure.
So that was the vibe for the day, was just get there by 4. Let's not take a lot of breaks. Let's, hammer this thing out. And that was the last day that it was the two of us, because after that, from the Bills game, Elise and Zach were staying in Buffalo and they were flying home. And then I had the luxury of going back to Northville with my dad, and he was going to drive me back to Prosecco, and I was going to finish from there. So nothing too notable about this day. Mainly just us trying to get to the pickup spot in Prosecco. And yeah, he picked us up. We went back to my parents in Northville. We got pizza from Cristiano's, which is a great pizza spot. And then we recorded our recap episode for the group.
Okay.
So we recorded that night too. We kind of sandwiched the whole thing with recording. And then next morning we woke up bright and early, drove to Buffalo, started tailgating immediately, and saw the Bills absolutely crush. It's the Dolphins or the Jaguars. I think it was the Jaguars. It was the game that ended 47-10 Bills, which was insane. So we were having a great time. And Zach and Elise have this 7 a.m. flight, and we were walking distance from our Airbnb. So I could hear them whispering oh, this is such a blowout. We'll just probably leave third period and go get some sleep and this and that. And me and my dad were just sitting there until the last minute, the last second. I think we might have been some of the last people in the stadium because we were just sitting there this freaking rocks. It was my first time going to a game at the stadium.
Very cool.
So yeah, we had a great time. We went to the Hammerlock to pregame. I found a man that was just tall and close to where they were pouring the ketchup and mustard on Pinto Ron. Asked him to put me on his shoulders. So I got this front row view of it, got splattered with the mustard and ketchup. Just was a classic fan that day.
Right. Bills fan. Bills fans. So good.
So yeah, had a great week for there. And then Monday morning, 8 a.m., woke up, got in the car. The highway was closed off because of an accident. So we took out a bunch of back roads, which my dad was absolutely loving. He was like, that's where I went to high school. That's where I took your mom on her first date. That's where we used to, there was some bar we drove past that I guess you used to pay $5 to get in, and you'd get a cup and then you could drink as much Jenny Light as you wanted for the night. So just, a tour like that on the way back, and got back to Prosecco. It was pretty much exactly the same timing. It was between 4 and 5 p.m. that he picked us up, and it was between 4 and 5 p.m. that he dropped me off.
Okay.
So that was nice because it kept everything kind of making sense in my head, because I felt like I'm just finishing this day. And I had a fever dream in between it where I might have been in Buffalo drinking a lot of alcohol. Got it. All right. So from there, I hiked to Mud Lake that night. Rain was coming in. That was the one thing that was on my mind, was rain was coming in, and it was supposed to be coming in on Wednesday. And so now it's Tuesday, and I'm thinking Wednesday night, we're going to get rain. Tuesday night, if I can get to somewhere with a lean-to, that would be great, because my tent is not functioning properly the way I'm setting it up. And if it rains, I'm going to get soaked. So I pushed to Mud Lake, lean-to. And now I know mileage because it's close enough to Northville where all the maps that go north start to make sense. So this was at mile 30.5 around.
Sure. And up until this point, you had no rain, if I recall, because you were hiking during this ridiculous 3-week stretch of just the perfect, flawless weather that any human ever want. It was amazing.
It was wonderful. Yeah, we had on the last day, I said nothing much happened, but on the last day, we did have a mile detour for some beaver ponds or something, but it was small enough and infrequent enough where I was like, oh, this is cool. Something to change up the vibe for the day. Nice. Yeah. But yeah, my feet were dry up until this point.
That's
my feet stayed dry.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I've heard that's unusual, but for me,
definitely
I got lucky.
Like I said, it was the weather was just it was unheard of how perfect
Yeah.
it was for such a long stretch of time up
Yeah.
here. So
The odds were in my favor.
big time.
So I get to Mud Lake and there's these two gentlemen there. I don't remember both of their names. I know one of their trail names was Pyro, which I remember because he had like the biggest fire going in the campfire pit. Checked out.
Yeah, definitely checks out.
Yeah, but it was great. They let me stay in the shelter with them. On my mindset of I've got two strong adult men here.
Mm-hmm.
If anything happens, I put myself third on the list of needs to respond. Sure.
Yeah.
Whether or not that ends up being true, that's where I'm going to mentally classify myself.
Sure.
And they kept the fire going while I was, getting all cozy. And when I woke up the next morning, it had rained throughout the night. So I was like, yes, so good that I slept in this lean-to. Mm-hmm. And they already had a fire going the next morning because they woke up earlier than I did. So I got to stand out there and warm up. It was cold. And I thought, man, I'm spoiled, but this rocks.
Yeah. Pyro knew he had to be a gentleman and he probably was up all night keeping that fire going because that's what Pyro does. Pyro as good as I think I do. He was up all night feeding that fire.
You don't get that trail name for nothing. I mean, they had a saw. The guys had a saw. So that's another reason I put myself third on the list. I'm like, you guys have weapons. Like,
they came prepared. They came to build the fire. They were probably there for days. Just feeding that fire.
They were great. So I took off that morning. I knew I wanted to wake up early because I think the rain was supposed to set in the afternoon. And I had my Zoleo, which is my sat nav, that gives weather in like 2-hour intervals. Mm-hmm. And it's sometimes accurate, sometimes not super accurate. But I was texting my fiance and I was like, look up the weather here. What time does it start? What time does it start? And he kept saying afternoon. And I'm like, well, he also said it wasn't going to start last night. It did. So I don't know what to trust. But if it's afternoon, I got to get moving early this morning. And so I started hiking probably around 7. For me, that's early, not a morning person. And I initially was going to try to get as far as I could before putting on my poncho, which was just a poncho my dad had in his car. I didn't really have anything special there. And I also had a trash bag that I brought in case I needed an extra layer of something. And so I got to lunch, which was, where did I have my lunch? Oh, I've got to switch to my notes app for this one. Wednesday.
So if you're at Mud Lake, you're basically passing you're in that West Canada's area, passing a bunch of lean-tos in one kind of area as you head south, if I recall. And then I think big stretch from there to Spruce Lake, where I don't think there's anything in between, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, my notes. So I started at Mud Lake and then I passed Noisy Brook. I wrote down all the waters and the campsites. I passed Noisy Brook. And then I passed Canary Pond campsite. I passed Silver Lake campsite. West Branch Sacandaga River I crossed. And then there was a trailside campsite in West Branch Sacandaga River. I think that's probably around where I took lunch. Mm-hmm. There was a lean-to wherever it was that I had lunch. Because I remember I sat inside quick to get out of the rain. And it wasn't even like it was raining yet. Mm-hmm. It was just put yourself back in that car wash mindset from day one where you're getting swiped on both sides, and it had rained the night before. So as I'm walking, I'm just going through these leaves that are already wet and they're just hitting me. And so when I got to lunch, I ended up taking out the trash bag and making myself a little rain skirt. And I ended up using that until it started to rain. And then once it started to rain, I thought, okay, now I'll put on the poncho. Spruce Lake tent site. That's where I had lunch.
Okay.
So there's a shelter there, which isn't on Onyx. And that's something that's my one beef with Onyx was it'll say tent site, but where that X is, there is a lean-to and it doesn't have note of that. So stuff like that was a little bit off, but I got water. I had lunch. Oh wait, no, sorry. I took a break there. I had lunch at Spruce Lake lean-to number 1. And yeah, I didn't stay for long. I ate some combos because again, I wasn't super hungry. I didn't want to take a long time to do it. I just wanted to get back moving before the rain started to hit.
Sure.
And as I'm there eating my combos in the shelter, I start to think, man, from Spruce Lake lean-to, I have how many miles? It was, where was I? How many miles left would that have been? Spruce Lake to Balsam Lake. I don't know. I feel like
Spruce Lake, like Spruce. Spruce Lake is like you're getting down there in terms of not like near the end finish line, but like you can start to see kind of where you're going.
I think I had about 20 miles left of the trail at that point. I think I'd done about 10 or 11 miles at that point. Because I remember I was thinking in terms of I want to get to West Stony Lake Lean-To for the night to sleep, which would have been a 22-mile day. That would have been 8.4 miles from the end of the day. And this is where my notes start to go kind of psycho. You can see that I'm putting focuses.
Sure.
I'm putting all these times next to it, right?
Yep.
Like mileages and times.
Yep.
And so I'm tracking how many miles do I have left at different times of the day. Because I'm like, I don't want to say this idea out loud yet, but I'm kind of thinking certain things. And so when I left lunch, I was like, do I want to get to this lean-to at 8.4 and find out that someone's already camping there and it's full because it's raining and everyone's starting the trail, and that's where everyone who starts the trail is probably going to go the first night, and it's off trail, so I'd have to add on bonus miles to go check it, only to find out that I have to then camp in the rain and everything's wet and my tent's not set up correctly? Or do I just want to send it and like have a warm bath tonight? And for some reason, I had tried to pack out grapes when I left after the Bills game because we had these really nice looking grapes in the fridge at home, and I forgot them in the car. And so my brain is just fixated on these grapes. And I'm like, if I got home tonight, I could lay in the bathtub and I could eat grapes. And I was like, I don't want to say it yet because I don't want to overwhelm myself, but I think I'm just going to try to send it.
All right.
So I had a very quick lunch. I ate some combos, I put on my poncho, and I got moving again. And so now I'm going, and I'm not really paying attention to much. My head's down because it's raining. I'm moving because I don't want to take breaks because I want to make sure that I'm setting myself up for success should I choose to do this. And it starts to get to like 4 p.m. where, when it's raining, it feels like it gets darker earlier than it should. And so I remember going past certain things, and like the lakes and everything just looked really eerie. Like from there, hiking past, let's see, got water there. Where am I here? Keep messing up my maps. Mud Lake, okay. Silver Lake, can't say. Sorry, bear with me.
The Silver Lake Lean-To to Northville, I feel like it's like 18 miles from there, from Silver Lake Lean-To to the end. That's the last lean-to I camped in.
I might have misspoke. I don't remember where I said I had lunch, but I'm looking at the map now and I'm like, where was I? Either way, near Silver Lake, I started writing down how many miles were left. So 25.5 near Silver Lake looked like it was the top of whatever climb I was doing. So I wrote that down. And then at mile 24, I got water. And then I passed Rock Lake campsite. And then at 20.5, this is all from Northville, what's left. I got water there. Or I'm just writing down where the water was. I didn't necessarily get water at all of them. 16.5, there was more water. Then I passed Woods Lake, and that was the lake, because it goes right along the shore there. And it looked eerie. Like, it looked like the perfect place to get murdered, because it was raining, and it was misty, and it was dark, and I was alone, and everything just looked creepy. And so I got
was somewhere in the woods. You don't know where, but he was somewhere in those woods at that point.
They were going north, so I was good on that. But so I was just like, man, this is creepy. But I told myself, I think I remember hearing that the last 3 miles are road walk. So I don't really have the shelter is 8.4 from the end, but it's not really 8.4. It's 5 because 3 are road, and that doesn't count. So I'm doing all the mental math to make this make sense in my head. And so I keep going, and I get to this lean-to at 8.4. And It's right where it crosses West Stony Creek. And I had to go down to West Stony Creek to get more water. So I said, I'll do that first, and then I'll go check this lean-to. And as I'm getting water, some guy hikes past coming north. And I'm like, there's no way he's not going to that lean-to. So there's another person that's probably at this lean-to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I fill my water, and I'm like, hell, I'm just going to walk across this river, and I'm going to go. And ate shit. I slipped on the rock, and it was like a comedic in a show thing where everything fell out from under me. I was laying in the stream, like butt totally in the water, legs totally in the water, hands catching myself totally in the water. Like, I am soaked. And as I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, now I'm definitely finishing tonight because everything's wet. So that was the deciding factor for me, was I just took a bath. I need to not go to this lean-to and find out that it's full. And the hard part about this part is now where I'm at in my books is like really creepy. Like, stuff's happening where it's like this guy's chasing this person. Like, there are these evil things that are amok, and like you don't know what's going to happen yet. And it's misty out and everything's scary and it's getting dark. And my headlamp, it was kind of like, you know, when you're driving, when it's snowing really hard and it's almost worse having your high beams on. It just like puts you straight into warp speed. Yep. It's like, I take that away. It was the same with my headlamp, where the headlamp on in the mist was almost making it harder to see things. So I tried not to use it for as long as I could. And then like this last 8 miles felt so long. The sun is fully gone. And at this point, like all I can see with my headlamp is just mist. I can't see the trail. And everything is so wet that I can't turn my phone screen on because my finger can't swipe on it because the phone screen is wet. And I need the map because I don't know where I'm going because I can't see the forest has spread out in terms of where the trees are, and the ground is all covered in leaves. And so where you would normally see the indent of the trail during the day, at night I couldn't see it. So any way could have been the way. And so I'm using my headlamp to kind of like go like that on trees, because if I see a blaze or one of the trail markers, it reflects. And so I'm looking for that reflection. And it's a lot of me going the wrong way, not seeing a marker, saying I should have seen one by now, because they really do have a lot of them in the beginning. Turning around, going back to where I last knew the trail was, trying a different direction, saying this doesn't feel right either, going back and trying again. And just having that reference point of this is the last marker I saw, I'm going that way. If I don't find another, I'm going back to this one and I'm trying a different direction with what I can see on my map. And I got to the point where I turned my phone. I had a moment where I dried it off. I had one tissue left, so I dried it off. And I zoomed in so close that like I'm either on this line or I'm not. And the line's not completely perfect. So it's like I'm going the general right direction, but maybe not exactly the right direction.
Sure.
And at this point, I'm just following the phone line because I want to make sure I'm going the right way. And if there's a switchback or there's a turn, I'm turning generally in the right place. And so it felt a lot like, not that I know what this feels like, but what I would imagine when you're like a pilot flying a plane through clouds, where you're kind of relying on the mechanics instead of actually seeing it. That's what this part was, because I couldn't see anything. And so I was really grateful to have the phone. And I also, like, you could argue that's really dumb, but in my mind, I thought I have everything I need at my back. I can pitch a tent whenever I want. If I can't find a marker, I can pitch a tent and I can find it in the morning with daylight. So I never really felt unsafe because I knew that I could stop whenever I wanted to. But I also knew that I kept finding the next marker eventually, and the miles keep going down, and the road starts at 3 miles, according to me. So I really only have 2 miles left, or I really only have 1.5 miles left. Am I going to pitch a tent and sit in it when I could just keep trying to figure it out for 1.5 miles? And I just couldn't wrap my head around that. And then I got to, what was it called? I put down that 2.6 was the road walk to camp to town. But I got to, what's it called? There's a campsite. Here it is. There's a campsite, Northville-Placid Trail parking area. And I had just looked up from my map. I didn't know that was there. And I saw a tent. And I was like, that's weird. And then I saw another tent and I realized, oh my God, I'm at a trailhead. And then I looked and I saw the line on my phone just went dead straight. And I said, if it goes dead straight, that's a road. And there's like 4 miles left at this point. So double what I thought was going to be road was road. All of a sudden I was done. I'm going through thinking I got this much left. All of a sudden I was at the road and I was stoked.
Yeah, that's that point for sure.
Yeah. I was just like, man, I've been faking it till I make it. And I'm like singing out loud to try to keep myself from getting creeped out. Like, I'm taking it literally step by step at this point. So to see the road come early for me was like, thank God.
Yeah. I love it.
And it's Wednesday and I had been texting Garrett, my fiance, like, okay, is the Timeless Tavern open? Like, I'm listing out the places in town and none of them are open on Wednesday, I guess. And I'm like, oh, bummer, whatever reason he couldn't find anything like that. And so I had texted my parents and I said, I'll meet you at the Timeless at 9 or 10, whatever time PM it was. And they came and they found me on the road and they were like, get in the car. And I'm like, no, I'm meeting you at the Timeless. And they're like, the Timeless is closed. And I'm like, that's not the point. The point is that's where the trail ends. I didn't do all this to get in the car. I will see you there.
Sure.
They're like, all right. So they drive away. They drive to the Timeless. And this goes back to the town being like, everyone knows everyone, small town feels like a home vibe. They got there and it was open, but it was, I guess, set to close after the dinner hours closed. And they told them, oh, well, Julia's, she's on the road now. She's finishing up. They kept it open. So the Timeless stayed open. And so I finished the trail and everyone there's clapping. They brought me in. They gave me a beer. And yeah, they kept the bar open for me, which was just such a sick way to end the hike.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
You're just like the champion at that point. Very cool.
Yeah. Well, they all thought I was nuts. They're like, you did 31 miles today. And I was like, I mean, yeah. But like, or what? Like, or I would have had a miserable night and gotten here tomorrow. Now I can wake up and get a burrito. I can go take my bath with my grapes. Like, I have tea. So
they all understood. As soon as you said like bath with grapes, they're all like, oh yeah, I would have done the same exact.
Who doesn't want that?
Yeah.
So
makes perfect.
Yeah, it was a very, it was a fun way to end it. Cause I feel like it was a very, just mentally big final day. Like there was a lot, there was a lot on the line, a lot of will I make it? Won't I make it? There was a lot of guesswork and trial and error and just all kinds of stuff that made it a really, really fun final day on trail.
Well, type 2 fun, a memorable final day on trail. Fun to talk about it now. In the moment, it's like, this is not awesome, but here we are talking about it now because these are the days we talk about. We talk about the grinds more than the sunny blue days out there. Very good. Well, it sounds like it was quite the adventure, start to finish. You have now hiked the Northville-Placid Trail, so now all that swag your parents give you, you now know like, oh, I know this trail now. Very cool.
Yep, exactly. I can wear them with pride.
Amen. So as we start to wrap things up, there's always 3 questions that I like to ask people that come on the podcast. I'm going to ask you as well. First, what is one unique thing that you always have to have in your backpack when you go hiking? Something unique to you.
Oh.
Could be like something you need. Could be just quirky. There's no wrong answer.
I don't carry a lot of fluff. I've got a very low base weight. I don't carry a lot of stuff because, again, 5'1", I don't have a lot of room to play with weight. Mm-hmm. So I try to keep the base weight super low so that I can shamelessly get the food I want. But I always have the things that I know that I could leave behind that I don't is I have a small Benchmade knife. And I have a thing of mace, and those are what help me sleep at night.
Sure.
Just those 2 things. And most of the times I never touch them. I never need them. But anytime a twig snaps at night, I'm sleeping with one in each hand, just like whatever puts you back to sleep. But I don't carry any fluff.
All right, cool. I am the opposite. I am the person that like cannot get my pack down because I'm like the nervous guy. Like I have the whole house in my backpack, even for just like a day hike in the high peaks, but I can't seem to make it lighter, whatever. It is what it is. So next question, what in your mind, now that you've done this big adventure through the 80K, what makes the Adirondacks a unique place from your perspective? So you've done the PCT, the AT, you've hiked all over. What makes the Adirondacks unique to you?
I think a couple of things. I think the communities. I think different trails have different trail communities and there's different vibes that go with them. But for me, like I said in the beginning, there's a lot of nostalgia. Maybe I hadn't spent a lot of time in the Adirondacks growing up, but upstate New York feels the same in a lot of different places. And I was really looking forward to seeing the foliage in the fall. I think New York fall foliage is something that you can't really replicate elsewhere, especially out west. And it's hard to explain to people what it looks like. I call them fruity pebble trees because that in my brain as a kid is what it looked like. And it's been a couple of years since I've been in New York in the fall to get to see them. So for me, getting to see that made that trail super unique and special. Was I get to see this type of autumn, and that reminds me of growing up.
I love it. Awesome. Yeah, you cannot beat the 80K in the fall, especially when you were here. It was the perfect time to be here for that. And my last question, why do you hike? Why do you put yourself in these hard places, doing these hard things? No one's making you do it. Why do you keep going out into the woods over and over again?
Yeah, I think something interesting that shifted in my brain once I did a through hike was I don't really like day hiking that much anymore. Like I used to go out every weekend. I'd go on a day hike Saturday and I'd go on a day hike Sunday. And after doing the PCT and the AT, I find it to be more fun to be chipping away at something bigger than to just spend a lot of time in the car to go out and see a view I've seen a lot of different times in a lot of different ways. Like you start to get jaded towards the views and you start to get kind of like one mountain looks like another. And to put in all the work of driving on a weekend and being tired after the fact and returning to work on Monday, for me, that's not as fun. But to have something where it's, 100 miles, 200 miles, several hundred miles, several thousand miles, and you're chipping away at it piece by piece, and then you get to finish it. I think something about that part of it makes it really exciting for me. So I like the bigger aspect of it more necessarily than like maybe the view or whatever that might be.
Great. Very cool. All right, Juliana, where can people find you online?
Sure. If you like podcasts, you can listen to more of me and some of James on the Backpacker Radio podcast. I am on Instagram at Juliana_Chauncey. I post videos of my hikes on YouTube. You can search Juliana Chauncey. And if you're getting into long distance hiking or you have family or friends that are kind of confused about a long distance hike that you want to do, I've written a book called Hiking from Home, a long distance hiking guide for family and friends. That is on Amazon, and it explains the ins and outs of what goes into a long hike, the culture, where you sleep, how you eat, how you get your water, how you find your way, what kind of navigation there is. It basically demystifies it for the people at home, but it also serves as a good intro to someone who's just jumping in and wants a really easy to read, broken down way of what goes into a long hike.
Awesome. Very fantastic. But that's going to wrap us up on this episode of the 46 of 46 podcast. It was great going back to the NPT. It's been too long since I've talked about this beloved trail here in the 80K, but check out 46outdoors.com to see everything I have to offer. Some guided group hikes this year. You want to get in better shape for hiking, everything I can offer you so you have a safe and successful trip here to the Adirondacks. Head over to 46outdoors.com. Check back on Fridays for new mountains, new stories, new guests, and new episodes. And I'll see you guys next time. Remember to always leave no trace, do the rock walk, and if you carry it in, carry it out. See you on the trails.